Goedemiddag allemaal. Fijn dat jullie hier zo talrijk aanwezig zijn. Ik had ook nog 70 mensen op de reservelijst staan, dus er was echt wel heel veel enthousiasme voor deze lezing vandaag. Mijn naam is Peggy Kriel. Ik werk voor het departement Omgeving van de Vlaamse overheid. Mijn collega's en ik verdiepen ons in hoe we burgers kunnen engageren voor de klimaattransitie en de ruimtelijke transformatie. Ik neem jullie even mee terug in de tijd, naar begin 2019. Toen kwamen tienduizenden mensen op straat om een krachtdadiger klimaatbeleid te eisen. Dat was best indrukwekkend. Ik vroeg me af, is dit de grote kentering? Uit enquêtes bleek al jaren dat mensen bezorgd waren. Zouden zij dan nu allemaal in actie komen? Zouden ze maatregelen afdwingen bij bedrijven en overheden en zelf effectief minder gaan vliegen, minder vlees eten en meer het openbaar vervoer nemen? Zou die grote groep betogers de rest van de bevolking op sleeptouw kunnen nemen? Zo simpel bleek het dan toch niet. Die klimaatspijbelaars kregen evenveel sympathie als tegenkanting. Hun boodschap zorgde voor veel verdeeldheid. Plots stonden er twee kampen tegenover elkaar, de spijbelaars en de boomers. En ondertussen vielen er gewonden en doden in Frankrijk, waar hele hesjes hun ongenoegen uitschreeuwden. Deze gebeurtenissen toonden dat de transitie naar een klimaatneutrale samenleving geen louter technisch vraagstuk is. Het gaat ook over botsende levensstijlen, normen en waarden en allerlei gewoonten die een samenleving vormgeven. Bovendien hebben burgers een cruciale rol in de transitie. Het 6e assessment report van het IPCC stelt dat aanpassingen in ons gedrag en levensstijl onze uitstoot enorm kunnen terugdringen. Om dergelijke grootschalige en collectieve veranderingen aan te brengen in de levensstijl van mensen, moeten we die mensen en levensstijlen goed kennen. We moeten begrijpen welke factoren gedragsverandering afremmen en welke ze versnellen. Infrastructuur, beschikbare technologieën, sociale normen, bewustzijn, gewoonten, tegenstrijdige behoeften en zo meer kunnen gedragsverandering ondersteunen of ze net bemoeilijken. En dus spelen gedragswetenschappen in de klimaattransitie een essentiële rol. Maar ook inzichten uit disciplines zoals sociologie, psychologie, communicatiewetenschappen, linguïstiek en vele andere zijn cruciaal om de klimaatcrisis te lijf te gaan. Als departement Omgeving willen we enerzijds graag bijdragen aan de integratie van verschillende disciplines en anderzijds willen we met de inzichten echt aan de slag gaan. Zo zijn we dit jaar gestart met een draagvlakmonitor voor de klimaattransitie. Het wordt een instrument om het draagvlak in kaart te brengen, evoluties erin te detecteren en beter te begrijpen. Lessen uit de motivatiepsychologie staan daarbij centraal. Volgend jaar starten we onderzoek naar taal en verhalen die werken of niet werken in klimaatboodschappen. Ook met evenementen zoals vandaag, deze lezing, beklemtonen we het belang van sociale wetenschappen om de klimaattransitie te versnellen. Er is veel werk aan de winkel om inzichten uit te bouwen en te verdiepen en om te zetten naar concrete initiatieven. Maar er is goed nieuws. Elke organisatie met achterban, met een bereik, kan bijdragen, kan een rol opnemen. Het is hier rond voor ons alvast fijn samenwerken met onze partners in dit event. Bond Beter Leefmilieu, de Koning Boudewijn Stichting, Puls Transitienetwerk, Reset.Vlaanderen en de Shift. Dames en heren, nog een korte mededeling. Deze lezing wordt opgenomen. Met een beetje geluk komt u in beeld. De opname zal u nadien worden toegestuurd en kan u verder delen met collega's en andere netwerken. En dan nu het woord aan de sprekers. George Marshall is de oprichter van Climate Outreach, een toonaangevend instituut voor communicatie over klimaatverandering. Climate Outreach adviseert overheden over heel de wereld. De Wereldbank, het IPCC, meer dan 20 universiteiten en grote milieuorganisaties. George heeft grote onderzoeksprojecten geleid in India, Canada, Australië en Noord-Afrika. Mr. Marshall, thank you so much for joining us today. However, ladies first. Jill Peeters hoef ik in Vlaanderen eigenlijk niet te introduceren. Als het regent, is het haar schuld. En als het niet regent, is het ook haar schuld. En als ze niet het mooi weer maakt, dan maakt ze een indrukwekkende reeks als Wat houdt ons tegen? Mevrouw Peeters, ik geef u graag het woord.
Goedemiddag. 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 Fantastisch met zoveel mensen hier. En dat er zelfs mensen op de wachtlijst staan, ik vind het geweldig. Bedankt voor de uitnodiging, bedankt om de moed te hebben om dit te organiseren. In 2000 werd ik weervrouw. En dat is het voordeel van zo lang in de media te werken. Dan kan je foto's laten zien uit je jonge tijd. Dat was eigenlijk een kinderdroom die uitkwam. Ik leef altijd met mijn hoofd in de wolken, mijn voetjes op de grond. En ik heb doorheen de jaren wel dat weer zien veranderen. Tussen het jaar 2000 en nu is er veel veranderd. En ik ben als opleiding, heb ik geografie gedaan, ben ik toch, denk ik, een beetje thuis in het systeem aarde. En ik heb dat systeem aarde en dan vooral het stukje atmosfeer enorm zien veranderen doorheen de tijd. En ik heb leuke dingen gedaan. Ik heb gedanst voor het klimaat. Wie heeft er ook meegedaan met het dansen voor het klimaat? Gezongen voor het klimaat. Ja, boeken geschreven voor het klimaat. Ja, studies gemaakt voor het klimaat. Ja, toch nog leuke dingen gedaan voor het klimaat. Lezingen gegeven voor het klimaat. Zo van die gekke dingen, dat is allemaal leuk. En dat zijn manieren om te zoeken van hoe kan ik nu die ontwrichting van die atmosfeer aan de mensen duidelijk te maken. Maar ik heb doorheen de jaren ook gemerkt dat de mensen hun vraag veranderden. Terwijl het vroeger ging over wordt het een witte kerst en wordt het een mooie zomer, is de vraag doorheen de jaren veranderd in moet ik een elektrische auto kopen en kan ik nog wel kinderen krijgen? En daar ben ik niet voor opgeleid om daar antwoorden op te geven, ook omdat het antwoord niet zo eenvoudig is. Ik heb van alles gedaan voor het klimaat. Ik heb ook ooit naakt op de cover gestaan voor het klimaat. Opnieuw een voordeel van lang in de media te zijn. Dan kan je oude foto's laten zien dat je er nog een beetje fatsoenlijk uitzag. Dat zou ik nu niet meer doen trouwens. Maar het was een manier om aandacht te trekken voor iets dat ik toen nog dacht van we moeten dat tof maken. Maar nu weet ik dat zo niet meer. Of dat we klimaatcommunicatie tof moeten maken. En daar zullen we het ongetwijfeld vandaag ook nog over hebben. Want terwijl we vroeger konden zorgen voor het mooie weer, voor een barbecue te organiseren of voor een trouwfeest of communiefeest of whatever, is het weer brutaal geworden. En het weer zorgt voor slachtoffers. Ik herinner mij nog alsof de dag van gisteren was toen het Pukkelpop-drama zich voltrok. Ik was toen die dag niet echt aan het werk, maar ik heb dat heel persoonlijk genomen, ook omdat mijn mailbox vol kwam te zitten met jongeren die dit hadden meegemaakt, of de ouders ervan. Van kijk, wat doen we hieraan? En ik vroeg me echt af, hadden we dit kunnen voorkomen? Hadden we met de kennis die we hebben van stormweer te voorspellen, hadden we dit kunnen voorkomen? Wat ging er fout? Wat hadden we anders moeten uitleggen aan de mensen om dit drama te voorkomen? En ik ben toen op pad gegaan. Ik ben naar het Walhalla geweest van dit soort weer in Tornado Alley in de Verenigde Staten. En daar ben ik op pad gegaan met de experten ter zake. Ik heb daar enorm veel geleerd over dit soort weer en ook over hoe je er moet over communiceren. Je ziet die fonkel in mijn ogen van die grote hagelstenen, maar een paar minuten ervoor liep ik nog met helm buiten omdat die hagelstenen dodelijk zijn. En we zien één op één een link tussen de grootte van de hagelstenen en climate change. Dus dat is een beetje een pervers effect van als je dan aan stormen aan het jagen bent en op zoek bent naar dat soort weer. Als je dat dan vindt en er middenin zit, dat is fantastisch, want we hebben die storm gevonden, maar anderzijds is het dan ook weer verschrikkelijk. Ik ga jullie niet uitleggen hoe een tornado ontstaat. Maar er zijn wel een paar dingen die fantastisch zijn hieraan, die ik daar heb geleerd. Zo'n ding kan ontstaan vanuit het niets in 20 minuten tijd. En je hebt experten nodig om die kleine rimpeling te zien in die massa data die ervoor zorgt dat heel dit wordt getriggerd, dat het uiteindelijk ontaardt in een tornado. En dat is een heel klein dingetje dat je moet opgemerkt hebben. En dan moet je op de juiste plek staan op het juiste moment. Want op 20 minuten tijd kan dit ontstaan. En dan krijg je opeens, ginder als stormchasend, opeens zo'n melding. Dan zit je als stormchaser goed, maar eigenlijk wil je daar niet zitten. Wat mij dat wel geleerd heeft, dat is dat we heel veel weten over hoe de atmosfeer werkt. Het heeft ons ook geleerd om met onzekerheden om te gaan. Het heeft mij ook geleerd wat de bekendste wet is van de chaostheorie. Dat is het vlindereffect. Jullie kennen de uitdrukking waarschijnlijk van het vlindereffect. Het vlindertje dat flappert met de vleugels in Brazilië kan een tornado doen ontstaan. We moeten het niet te letterlijk nemen, maar het is wel een bekende wet uit de chaostheorie. En de atmosfeer is één grote chaos. En wat we leren is dat als je in de chaos een kleine verstoring teweeg brengt, een kleine verandering in de initiële situatie, dat kan een exponentieel effect hebben. Of niet. Het vlindereffect heeft mij heel veel geleerd en staat me toe 2 belangrijke dingen met jullie te delen. Dit is een grafiek die jullie misschien ook wel gezien hebben. Die komt uit het laatste IPCC-rapport. Laat de verschillende scenario's zien van de temperatuurstijging richting 2100. We zitten hier met experten in de zaal. Ik veronderstel dat ik dat niet moet uitleggen wat hier net op staat. Maar in het kader van die disruptie, die verstoring van die chaos in de atmosfeer, is dit zo'n simpele voorstelling dat we daar eigenlijk binnen communicatie niets meer zijn. Terwijl langs de ene kant van de wereld in brand staat en langs de andere kant van de wereld onderloopt. Die grote contrasten, ook in ons land. We moeten ons meer en meer voorbereiden. En ik vind een fantastische uitspraak van Helen Mountford. We moeten ons meer en meer voorbereiden op iets onvoorstelbaars. Maar hoe doe je dat? Je voorbereiden op iets onvoorstelbaars. En dat is nochtans de realiteit waar we nu voor staan. De bosbranden, de overstromingen. Vorig jaar de natste zomer die we ooit hebben meegemaakt in ons land. En dit jaar, dit is een foto van bij mij, van de weide. Ik heb ezels in mijn weide. Ja, ik heb een beetje het gevoel dat ik naar een weiland kijk in Senegal of zo. Dat is de realiteit waarin we zitten. Nu, voor communicatie is dat wel een fijn, want je kan dan zeggen als klimaatcommunicator van ja, het klimaat kent meer en meer extremen. De extremen worden extremer. Het ene jaar is het record nat en het andere jaar is het record droog. En zo verder enzovoort. Het aantal records die ik zie passeren is niet bij te houden. En er staan er ons helaas nog veel te wachten. En dit is eigenlijk wat heel typisch is aan een chaotisch systeem dat onze atmosfeer is. Dat is als je een chaotisch systeem wat verstoort, dan krijg je eigenlijk mogelijk enorme uitspattingen. En dat is eigenlijk de handtekening van klimaat en dat is het vlindereffect. Wat we ook kunnen leren van dat vlindereffect, en dan neem ik u even een andere richting uit, dat is wie dat wij zijn in dit verhaal, wat onze rol is en wat onze verantwoordelijkheid is. Leen Gorissen, die het fantastische boek Natural Intelligence heeft geschreven, heeft mij onder meer geleerd dat het belangrijk is niet altijd om je te focussen op wat je doet, maar goed te kijken naar wie je bent of wie je wilt zijn in het geheel. Wat is je rol? Wat is je verantwoordelijkheid in het grotere geheel? En neem die rol op, neem die verantwoordelijkheid op. En dan kan je ongetwijfeld op een dag ervoor zorgen ook dat je een rimpeling bent en dat je een vlindereffect veroorzaakt. Mensen die daar wat diepgravender willen op ingaan, binnen een dikke maand is het organiseren Leen en ik een workshop rond regeneratief leiderschap, hoe dat je kan groeien en hoe dat je je weerbaarder kan opstellen in een zeer verstoorde wereld waarin we nu zitten. Onlangs had ik eer en genoegen om Harari te ontmoeten. En nog voor ik hem gesproken had, heb ik deze boetade eigenlijk wel veel van hem overgenomen. Dat is ook iets dat je in zijn boeken leest, voor de mensen die zijn boeken hebben gelezen. Dat is dat kennis wordt overgedragen door stories en door goede storytellers. En ik ben 2,5 jaar weg geweest als weervrouw en ik heb toen ook onder meer de tijd genomen om eens na te denken van wat is mijn rol en welke verantwoordelijkheid neem ik best op of het liefst op. Welk puzzelstukje ben ik in het geheel? En het aspect van telling stories heb ik ter harte genomen. En Peggy haalde het al even aan. Ik heb voor Canvas een reeks mogen maken. Wat houdt ons tegen? Die is trouwens nog maar een maand online beschikbaar op hun platformen. En dan wordt die eraf gegooid. Helaas. En we hebben daar de complexiteit niet uit de weg willen gaan. Oké, we waren beperkt binnen 5 afleveringen, maar goed. We hebben de complexiteit niet uit de weg willen gaan, maar ik wil 3 excuses van wat u mogelijk tegenhoudt even aanhalen. Wat houdt ons tegen? Veel mensen zeggen ons... het is dat we het niet weten hoe we het moeten oplossen. Het is, ja, we zitten vast in het systeem. Wat kan ik eraan doen? Of het kost allemaal te veel geld. Sta me toe 3 heel korte verhalen uit de reeks aan te halen die eigenlijk deze 3 argumenten tackelen. Namelijk, we weten niet wat we moeten doen. Wouter Duchesne van Q-Pinch heeft een fantastische manier ontwikkeld om restwarmte te upcyclen in een industrieel proces, zodanig dat die waste of energy dus niet verloren gaat. Dat is een man, dat is een ingenieur, dat is een slimme mens. Het proces dat hij ontwikkeld heeft, ik zou er niet moeten aan beginnen. Ik snap er ook maar de helft van hoe dat werkt. Maar die man heeft wel zijn verantwoordelijkheid genomen, heeft zijn rol gespeeld, heeft risico genomen. En het is niet makkelijk wat hij doet, maar het begint stilaan zich meer en meer uit te rollen. En dan zie je dat mensen die de kennis hebben en de goesting hebben en de moed hebben, dat die mooie dingen kunnen doen, die verandering kunnen teweegbrengen. Veel mensen zeggen, ja, maar we zitten vast in het systeem en we doen maar rustig verder. Wel, Boer Thijs heeft dat niet gedaan. Fantastische mens, heel inspirerende man. Heeft een agro-ecologisch bedrijf. Niet makkelijk. Vorig jaar alles ondergelopen, dit jaar geen druppel regen. Niet makkelijk wat die man doet, maar hij doet het toch wel. In het Pajottenland een fantastisch landbouwbedrijf. Op een stukje dat vroeger puur monocultuur was en verschraald was, heeft hij nu nieuw leven gebracht. En de producten worden hier in Brussel verkocht. En dat is een beetje de oude functie trouwens, de functie of een relatie die het Pajottenland altijd heeft gehad met Brussel. Dat een beetje de groentetuin was van de grote stad. En die man geeft werk, of ze geven zich werk met meerdere mensen. Dus het werkt wel. Oké, de energiecrisis... Ik weet niet dat we ons vandaag op die weg gaan begeven, maar zeggen van het kost ons allemaal heel veel geld. Op dit moment kost het ons veel geld, maar Stefan is eigenlijk een man die op zoek is gegaan naar mensen in energiearmoede en heeft daar een manier bedacht om die mensen ook toegang te geven tot energiezuinige toestellen. Want mensen die in armoede leven zijn niet in staat om dure energiezuinige toestellen te kopen, maar hij zorgt dat er een soort huursysteem is, zodanig dat die mensen wel toegang hebben tot die energiezuinige toestellen. En dat zorgt ervoor dat hun rekening op het einde van de maand niet de spuigaten uitloopt. Fantastisch initiatief. Ik loop daar altijd warm van. Dus de vraag is ons... dat is eigenlijk wel grappig. We hebben toen reclame gemaakt in de knak met vroeg of laat houdt niets ons nog tegen. Ik wou dat het waar was. Maar we moeten ons misschien wel afvragen van wat dat er nodig is vandaag. Wat hebben jullie nodig om ervoor te zorgen dat niets ons nog tegenhoudt? Dat we met z'n allen in gang schieten. En we hebben goede verhalen. En zo in de geest van Harari, we hebben die storytelling nodig. We moeten goede verhalen vertellen. In de geest van Harari is dit belangrijk om die verhalen te vertellen. En oké, ik weet, ik heb het hier 3 voorbeelden gegeven van mannen. Ik had dan misschien ook wat voorbeelden moeten geven van vrouwen. Maar de slimme quotes eerder in de presentatie waren grotendeels van vrouwen. Om maar te zeggen, we kunnen ons daar eigenlijk niet meer achterweg steken. Iedereen heeft zijn of haar verhaal te vertellen. En wat je tegenwoordig wel in de media ziet, dat zijn dergelijke verhalen. En je kan je afvragen of dat dit het soort verhalen is die we nodig hebben. Code rood, ga niet wandelen in de bossen. Allemaal gevaarlijk. Grote bosbranden. Maar het ergste moet nog komen. Ik roep er een beetje bij, maar het zijn zo schreeuwerige titels. Het is de climate endgame. Het gaat leiden tot een grote catastrofe. En deze hebben jullie ongetwijfeld niet gemist vorige week nog. We staan met 1 voet in het graf. We kunnen ons afvragen of dit het soort verhalen zijn die we nodig hebben. We gaan daar verderop nog over reflecteren. Want het grappige krijg je dan dat de eindredacteur van de meest gelezen krant dan een artikel schrijft over zeg, al die boodschappen, we mogen niet meer gewoon genieten van het mooie weer of wat. Dan denk ik, ja, de pot in de ketel en zwart zien en dergelijke meer. Het heeft een beetje een gek effect om enerzijds te zeggen van ja, het is schreeuwerig, lelijk, het climate change en het weer dat op ons afkomt. En dan te zeggen van oh, wij, ocharmen, mogen er niet meer van genieten of wat. Dus je krijgt natuurlijk in de media ook dergelijke verhalen. En anderzijds krijg je ook dergelijke wervende verhalen voor mensen die de Humo een paar weken geleden, ik zie wat mensen ja knikken, een paar weken geleden dit artikel hebben gelezen. Met een slimme manier van communiceren kan je ook een heel ander verhaal vertellen over hetzelfde. En ik denk dat we daar ook vandaag eens moeten over reflecteren. In plaats van ons daar tegenaf te zetten, kunnen we misschien daar juist veel over leren. En ik vraag me af natuurlijk... Ja, ik vraag me van alles af, maar ik ga het voor mij houden op dit moment. Wie heeft dat Humo-artikel gelezen? Het valt nog mee. Oké. Misschien een hele hoop mensen die dachten van, nee, gaan we niet doen. Oké. Dus heel belangrijk in mijn ogen is de verhalen. En ik heb een bloemlezing gegeven van een paar verhalen die de laatste weken in de media kwamen. En ik denk dat we ons ernstig de vraag moeten stellen, niet alleen wie dat we die verhalen laten vertellen, maar ook wat ze vertellen. En ik heb George Marshall, die zo meteen komt, zoveel jaar geleden op de kop, I guess it was the COP in Poland, the 24th, I think, I guess, or 23rd, or ja, 23e, 24e, we zijn het tel kwijt. Ja, een van de vele belangrijke, dringende COP's. Wat ik uit zijn kennis en expertise ook gehaald heb, is dat het belangrijk is dat we het gesprek aangaan. Het gesprek aangaan met u, en we gaan daar straks nog verder over gaan, dat we het gesprek aangaan met de mensen die dat je kan toespreken. En dat is voor iedereen anders. Voor mij is dat Climate Without Borders. Dat is een netwerk van weermensen. Dit is de foto die we genomen hebben de dag dat we officieel opgericht zijn. Met in het midden mijn voorbeeld en grootste idool Christiana Figueres en naast mij Patricia Espinosa. Ja, dat was fantastisch om dit netwerk van weermensen op te richten. Toen waren we met 25. Wij hadden toen een daily reach van 375 miljoen mensen per dag. We zijn nu met 145. Dit is iets dat ik kon doen. Ik ben daar geïnspireerd door geweest op het moment dat de Paris Agreement op tafel lag. En Fabius die zei van, er zit een stukje van elk van ons in het verdrag van Parijs. En dan ben ik op zoek gegaan naar dat stukje van mij. En er is een paragraaf die spreekt over het feit dat alle lidstaten verplicht zijn om over dit onderwerp te communiceren. Dat is een plicht die we hebben. En ik dacht, oké, dat is een stukje dat ik misschien wel een bijdrage kan inleveren. Maar zo zijn er andere bewegingen, andere groepen. Ik zag daarnet de man van Grootouders voor het Klimaat. Er zijn ook wetenschappers voor het klimaat. Er zijn jongeren voor het klimaat. Er zijn zoveel organisaties voor het klimaat. Gelukkig niemand tegen het klimaat, hoewel dat die er ongetwijfeld ook zijn. Belangrijk dat er zo'n dingen bestaan. Ik was een paar weken geleden op dit event, georganiseerd door Tomorrowland. Waar dat eigenlijk... ik vond dat tof. Ik vond ook tof dat Planet, Profit en People een keer werd met Party gecombineerd. Die P hadden we nog niet gehad binnen klimaat. Dus ja, ik vond dat tof. Ik vind dat heel moedig dat ze dit organiseren. Oké, je kunt daar uw gedachten over hebben en denken van ja, zijn zij wel de mensen om dat te organiseren? Maar ze hebben het wel gedaan. En ik vond dat eigenlijk heel fijn om ook daar te kunnen zijn. Dus dat zijn twee dingen dat ik graag meegeef. Eén, omring u, zorg voor een community. Zorg ook voor een gemeenschappelijke taal, iets dat u verbindt. Heel belangrijk. Ga zeker het gesprek aan. Heel belangrijk. En neem uw verantwoordelijkheid. Zoek uw rol. En op een dag ben je misschien ook dat vlindertje dat dan een tornado van goedheid in gang brengt. En voilà. Dit was een beetje Mijn idee deze middag, dat ik graag met jullie wilde delen. Ik mag zo meteen George het woord geven. Aansluitend gaan wij nog hier... Ja, je zit hier nog wel even. Hè? Aansluitend gaan wij hier nog even napraten over een paar ideeën. En daarna hebben jullie ook sowieso nog de tijd en ruimte om het vragen te stellen aan George. Dus dat is een beetje het verdere verloop van deze middag. Dus ja, mensen met sanitaire stop hebben ze niet voorzien. Dus je zit hier 2 uur opgesloten. We moeten bij Peggy reclameren. Voilà, George, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jill. Ooh. Thank you so much, Jill. Am I on? I am. It's funny seeing that photograph. I do have more than one tie. Maybe this is your special tie, Jill. I'll just wear this for you. You will have a chance to talk to each other after my presentation. So, of course, I'm speaking in English. I'm so sorry. And then you will have a chance to talk to the people around you. So, how do we get more people involved in climate action? I'm going to take these big questions: why, who, what, how. Oh, but I'm going to go forwards. Why? Why do we need to get people involved in climate action? I mean, many engineers think this is just an engineering issue. There are people who say, well, we can transition to new forms of energy. Do we really need to talk to people? Well, yeah, there's a lot of reasons why. One of the big reasons is that all of the predictions for our targets, the UK Committee on Climate Change is expecting that 62% of the target of net zero involves people making choices and changes in their behavior. Not completely, but that's a big part. The IPCC, as already Peggy was saying, yes, personal behavior is hugely important. And people will only change their behavior if they're involved and if they're a part of it. But we have to be careful with this language. Change your behavior. This is exactly what people hate. They do not want the government to say to them, you must change your behavior. You must stop eating meat. You must use a bicycle. So immediately we see in the language behavior change already. We have a problem. And I will keep saying this. The language has to be you are important and you can make a contribution. And after 20 years working on this, I am absolutely convinced that this is the equation. Everybody can make a contribution. I will keep coming back to that point. And that is the language to use, not technocratic. There's a whole world, of course, of what's called nudge, of how we can, nudge theory, it's called. How you can push people towards making wiser decisions, how you can encourage people, how you can have a tax system which moves people to better behavior. Yes, all of that is important. But in the end, people only change their behavior because it is part of their values. They change their behavior because that is who they are. Second reason why we need to talk to people is because it works. This is really important to say to policymakers. Policymakers say, well, but talking to people, public engagement, this is expensive. And I go, well, not really. It actually works. Now, the problem is, the man who started Lever, the Unilever, the huge international company, a guy called Lord Leverhulme, said, I spend £10 million a year on advertising, and only half of it works. The problem is, I don't know which half. It's a famous quote, right? But it's the same with all forms of public engagement. Probably only half of it works. We don't know which half. So we cannot say this thing achieved this. But what we can say is when we do things across societies, we see change. Like this one, for example, this is Canada. This is like an experiment in public engagement. Every province has a different strategy on climate change. And this here is Quebec. Quebec is completely ahead of the rest of Canada on its attitudes to climate change. And the main reason for that is two. First of all, because for 30 years, the government has been supporting public education and public engagement on climate change. Secondly, because the people of Quebec now see a positive attitude on climate change as part of who they are. It is part of their identity. They are proud that they are not like these people over here in these states. This is Alberta, for example. We're not like them. We're Quebecois. We're proud of the fact we support this. So it is part of their identity. That is the kind of proof, and we see this again and again. In my own country, in Britain, in Scotland, the Scottish are far ahead of the English in support for climate action. Why? I'm going to explain in a while. The third reason is because if you do not involve people, they cannot make intelligent and informed decisions. They can't make decisions about where to live, they can't make good decisions about the work to do, and they cannot make good decisions on policy or who to vote for. So if you do not involve citizens in climate change and talk to them as intelligent people, you get things like this. This is Australia, when the Australian government tried to bring in a very soft carbon pricing policy. And it was one of the key things, maybe the key thing, that brought down the government. Why? Because people of conservative values, people in the middle of Australian society, had not been involved. Nobody talked to them, nobody spoke to them with respect. They went the other way. And of course, in France, we had the Gilets jaunes, which also started with a carbon pricing, climate change policy. And when you speak to people in these movements, and I speak to hundreds of people in my work who do not support action on climate change, in the end, it always comes down to trust. If you do not trust people, you do not accept what they're saying. If you do not trust government, you do not trust scientists, you do not trust environmentalists, you don't follow it. So this is why we have to involve people. And finally, people have a right to know. I'm really horrified by how little people know about climate change and what is happening. I think as you know, as you were saying, Jill, we need to prepare for something we cannot imagine. Well, most people don't even have a beginning. They do not even know what is coming. And I'm especially concerned as a social justice issue in the poorer world, in the less developed world. People have no information about what is happening. They cannot prepare. People have a fundamental right to know. That is written into international law. The Framework Convention on Climate Change, 1992, Article 6, governments will implement educational public awareness programs. The Paris Agreement says it again. I do not know a single government that has done this properly. I'll give you examples of some nice projects, but to really do it, to do it properly, to inform and educate your citizens. And this is really, I think, the big challenge. I should say, this is a rights issue. In Belgium, you had a court case a year ago where the case successfully said that the climate policy is in breach of fundamental human rights. So we need more of a discussion about rights, and I think the right to know is a key one. So here's some key learnings. Each time I'm going to have this little thing where it's written up on the board. What do we need to do? Well, a shared mandate for action, a mandate where people know, they support, they're informed, they want to do things, they support action, that everybody feels they have something to contribute. That's the key word. We all have something to contribute. So, what? What are we going to do? No, big word. What? I'd like to start, if I could, by talking about my own organization, to explain where all of this comes from. 20 years ago, me and a friend started a non-profit organization to do this work, to inform people about climate change. We were certainly the first in Britain, maybe one of the first in Europe. People were really not talking enough about climate change then. I would go and I'd give a talk on climate change and there'd be no one in the room. And we've grown. But the challenge is still there, the challenge of how do we reach and involve people. it's not just language also. Please, if you are using images in your work, have a look at our program, Climate Visuals. It's a program to try and find images that work, test images. Can we change the picture vocabulary of climate change? This started from me just going crazy over polar bears. I am so sick of polar bears. Polar bears are not connected to climate change. They are a long, long way away. They have no connection with ordinary people. And every single newspaper article, every environmental magazine had polar bears on it. I went to India and I did focus groups with people in India. And I said, tell me, what do you think is going to happen from climate change? And they said, well, we think it really could be a problem for polar bears. I said, I'm going to scream, this is India. So we need new images. And I think we've been successful in this. Huh? And a lot of listening. I mean, I personally have probably spent 100 hours sitting in focus groups, just listening to people, especially people I do not agree with, people who are not environmentalists, people who are from different places in life, listening with respect, understanding who they are and why they think different things to me. So, what works? Yeah, you see, there we are. There's that polar bear on a little piece of shrinking ice. We know that as we were hearing from Jill, there's always this question, talking about the bad news, does it work? Does it motivate people? And I'm afraid the evidence is that it does not, except for people who are motivated by bad news. And that's a real problem, because the people who are involved with the environmental discussion, especially climate change, have a very strong habit of projecting their own values onto what they do. So they say, hey, this works for me. I'm terrified about this, so I'm going to go and terrify these other people. And they're not asking, hang on, are they the same as me? You know, something I always like to do with environmental activists is I like to show them something I know is a very, very bad piece of communications. And I say, so what do you think of that? And they go, yeah, it's kind of good. Yeah, I really liked it. And I say, right, that should be a big warning sign for you that it is going to be terrible communications, because you are not normal. And if you like this, it works for you. That means it will work very well for people like you. So I think we keep talking to people like ourselves. And I say this as somebody, I've worked in the environmental movement now for 35 years. And we have to find new ways of talking, and I think moving away from disasters. Facts and figures. I'm sorry, the scientists need to know. Facts and figures don't change attitudes. There is a psychological process of confirmation bias where people take the information they want to support the story they already have. They have a story in their mind, and then they get the information. People with a high level of education or people with a high level of intelligence have very well-educated, very intelligent stories. And they take information from that. And that is why I meet people who are very, very smart, who are talking absolute rubbish. But they do it because they have the story. The story is the central thing. And almost the proof that facts and figures don't change attitudes is that for 20 years, I have been presenting climate scientists with the evidence that facts and figures don't change attitudes, and they keep making presentations based entirely on the graph without understanding human psychology is a different process. People start with a story. Here's a nice example, not a little painful for us in Britain, the Brexit battle bus. This is information supporting a story. The story is, let's take back control from the European Union. The information is, we send £350 million a week to the European Union, let's fund our National Health Service instead. So the story dominates, and people bring in the information to support the story. This, incidentally, is a lie. It is not true. But people don't care. because they like it, because it supports this story. People do this all of the time. So we need, as Jill was saying, we need to concentrate on this story. And the essence is this. Climate change is understood as a socially constructed narrative. That's a story, but a narrative is a more complex form of story. Socially constructed between people. We designed this thing together. Conveyed by trusted communicators. People we trust tell us this. And this story reflects people's identity and validates their values. Now, I'm going to go over everything on that. But I'm going to start by saying this is from a report we wrote for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, who asked us to advise them on communications. And I always say to them, look, your science is supported by, you do research, it goes into peer-reviewed papers, it is part of the academic process. So the literature that supports that statement is maybe that big, and then I stopped putting it down. Yeah? If we were to take that, I could put that many references behind it. So we're talking here about something that has a very strong evidence base. Let's unpack this a little bit. Strong communications do this. They start by reflecting people. This is who you are. You're great, whoever you are. You're great. Look at Donald Trump when he's standing in front of coal miners in Pennsylvania. Hey, you guys, you're great. And he's got a hat saying, Trump digs coal. And they vote for him. And they vote for him because he validates them and makes them feel good. This is who you are. You are great. And this is what you care about. Not me, not them, you. This is what you care about. And you know why? Because it's important. And look, other people here, they also agree with this. The people around you, they agree about this. So if we're talking about climate change, look, your neighbor says this, your friend says this, your family says this. Good communications has to do this because the reason people want to take action on climate change is not to stop climate change. Communication saying take action on climate change to stop climate change misses the point. The reason people want to do it is because it's who they are. And for many people, stopping climate change is who they are. For many people, it is not. It's caring for their family, it's doing a good job, it's being a good Muslim, it's supporting their community. When you do this, you become more a part of who you are, and the world around you becomes more how you want it to be. This formula works for any group, and the reason it works is because you go to them and you ask, tell us who you are. What do you care about? What do you think is wrong with the world you would like to change? And then we have the way to speak to them. And for every group, will be different. And I'm going to show you how this is different when we apply it to each and every group. So, kind of takeaway points. We validate people's identity and values. We make them proud of who they are so that they can contribute. Yeah? And they're going to take action in their lives and in the community because that is who they are. So we have to find this magic point where people understand that I'm this is my identity, and this identity is about doing this climate action. I want to talk about trusted messengers for a moment. Who is trusted? Well, the real answer is somebody who is like me. I trust you because I can see you are like me. You are this person or that person or that person. You are like me, you're my friend, you're my family, I work with you. So this trust is very, very important. The people we trust most, our friends, our family, then maybe further away, people we work with, our community, our neighbors. In some tests in America, they were finding that people trusted someone in the street more than they trusted a climate scientist. That's a bad sign. So going further and further that way, further out. And this is powerful. Look, if we're looking at behavior change, this, for example, is a housing estate in Britain. You can see how people are getting solar panels fitted because they're alongside each other. Someone wrote a whole paper on this. They looked at the mathematics of this, of how solar panels would collect in the same street because of this peer effect. People would say, hey, cool, I love your solar panels. Yeah, it's great, it's making me loads of money. You should try this. Because it's part of who they are, right? And they start to do that. We did a program with the Scottish government called Climate Conversations, and the Scottish government funded work for starting communications in different communities. Now, this was just a small program, but it was a good one. It ran all across Scotland, but it was part of a much larger program by the Scottish government. They spent 140 million euros over 15 years supporting community organizations to do local climate action, local projects, and talk about climate change. And it worked. It worked because Scotland now has some of the strongest support for climate action, certainly the strongest in Britain and some of the strongest in Europe. Now we have the problem of trust. Some people are more trusted than others. Here we are. Doctor scientists, look, Joe, weather forecasters. Weather forecasters, you have a high level of trust to tell, 54%, but you're doing well. Look, up there. Nurses, doctors, really strong. Ooh, 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 ooh. Here we go. Person in the street scores well. Remember that point I said? Goes down. Ooh, charities getting hard. Right, here we go. Trades unions, councillors, bankers, business leaders, professional footballers. Interesting. Journalists, estate agents, government ministers, politicians. And I've added in some from other data as well. Here we go. The key people talking on climate change, or some of the key people, are not trusted. And this is certainly an issue. And the biggest issue is trust in government. And weirdly, Belgium has extremely low trust in government. In this data here of 48 countries studied by the OECD research, only Poland and Chile had lower trust in government. I don't know what's going on here, because it seems to me it's not that bad, right? But it does mean that governments communicating is a problem if this is all about trust. And I will come back to that point. We have to find a way that the communicators are also, government, but also other people. We also have to remember that we define ourselves not just by who we are, but by who we are not. So if I say I'm this person, I'm also saying I'm not that person. And where this gets important is we have to recognize that there is a problem with environmental communications as well. And I say this as a proud environmentalist, many, many years, including working in senior management in Greenpeace, all of the main organizations. We have a problem. And I know that there's some people here from environmental organizations. We have a problem because our communications often actively alienates conservatives. And this is part of a polarization process, particularly in America. And again, this goes back to that point. Environmentalists should speak to environmentalists. Great. Governments can speak to governments. But we need different people to speak to different people who are trusted. So we need to mobilize new communicators, trusted communicators. We need to help people to talk to the people around them. There is a climate silence. People don't talk about climate change, and we have to support them to do that talking. And we can't depend on government, media, and environmental organizations. And at the moment, we depend on them. At the moment, most of the communication is by those three groups. And thank you environmentalists and media and government for working on this, but we have to open this up. What can governments say then? Well, governments can say a lot, actually. I know there are people here from governments. You can say a lot. I think what you can say is, this is what we're doing. You know, people want to know that. This is what we're doing. This is the energy we are saving. This is our strategy. This is our waste. Yeah? This is what we're doing. They don't want to be told what they should do, but they want to know what you are doing. This is what we're demanding that business does. Now, this is important. People want business to be told what to do. This is what we are helping communities and citizens to do. And this is what we are asking you to do. This formulation, we've tested it, it proves well, it's this, yeah? We're doing this, we're demanding this, we're helping this, and we're asking you to do this. So we're all in a contract, yeah? We are all in a contract where we are all doing what we do well, and citizens are doing something to contribute. Who? Big word. Who? Who are we talking to? So important. If we are speaking to values and identity, who? We, in climate outreach, we have been working now for some years on a big program. I'm just checking what I've got here. Good. Called Talking Climate, in which we have divided the British population into 7 different groups, 7 different attitude groups. Now, I'm not going to explain all of this. Please look at our website. But we're very proud of this. We think this is a very useful way to think. Because if people's attitudes are shaped by their values and their identity, then we need to know what their values and identity are, and then we know how to talk to them. Some of these are kind of obvious. Progressive activists, easy. Backbone conservatives, yeah, we can imagine that. But I, as a change maker, I am most interested with these groups here, especially these groups here, who are harder to reach and who are often not involved. I'm going to explain this a little bit. One thing I'm going to say, by the way, is that COVID, in our research, all of the groups agreed that we are now more together as a society. Look at the difference here. Now, this, of course, this was at the beginning of COVID, and we have not done research to show what has happened since. But before COVID started, we could see that most people thought it's everyone for themselves. When COVID was already operating, it changed completely. We're looking after each other. Now, the question is, do we still feel that way? I believe we do. Of course, it's weaker, but there has been a change. We feel more connected now. We need to work with that. Now, all groups are concerned about climate change. All of these different groups here, whether you're an activist or a battler or these groups here. But what I think is very interesting is this group here. So I'm going to talk about them, called Loyal Nationals. We were fascinated by this. We never realized that there's this group here who have a level of concern which is right up there, almost like number 2 after progressive activists, right? That no one was talking to about climate change, who are in this group of being extremely worried. So let's have a look at them and see if you have these also in Flanders. Older, bit more male, working class, lower education, angry, threatened, feel the world is getting dangerous. They don't like big business. They don't like rich people. But they feel strongly that they want to bring back capital punishment and they want immigrants out of the country. And then you can see, okay, so that's why environmentalists aren't talking to them, because these people are grassroots, working class conservatives. They are not the group that environmentalists speak to. but they are very engaged on climate change. So I'm particularly interested in groups like this. How can we engage them and motivate them? Maybe we can talk about that in the question session. Here's some thoughts about what works and what does not work, okay? Well, first of all, we worked for the Welsh government, and the Welsh government invited us to go and to test for them language on climate change, and we went and tested their language. So we found some good language, but we went and tested their language. So I wrote up this sheet of things from Welsh government publications and speeches, and we tested them. And this group of kind of grassroots working class conservatives hated it. Absolutely hated it. They hated every part of it. And this is an important lesson for all of us. This leadership language, they hate it. They say, that's just a politician talking. That's what politicians always say about how we're a big leader in this. It's like, we're not a big leader, we're just like a little country. Thousands of new jobs. I don't see any jobs. You show me the jobs and I'll believe what you're saying. And this is important. We will have exciting modern technologies, smarter cars, efficient houses. Rubbish, delusional nonsense. I can't afford the car I have. I don't even trust wind power. Very interesting that the government is using its communications with no idea that it doesn't work with a major part of its audience. Here's another thing that doesn't work. Again, this is something which people think works and doesn't. The language we tested here in a national polling was investment has exploded. Corporations are taking climate change very, very seriously because it's a serious issue. And this is what people in focus groups say, saying, I'm very suspicious when people make money from something. Big business is greedy. It's all to make money. This, again, is an example of how, if you test language, you find it often doesn't work. This works. This works. This is a story of somebody saying, hey, I just started and I built a company. I trained some people. I'm very proud of it. Small companies. People starting small businesses. This message works very well. People like this. They respond well to it. So stories about how people do things themselves, small businesses, that works very well with these more conservative audiences who are harder to reach on climate change. This is a whole lot of things here. Very important now also with the energy crisis, with bad weather, language around preparing, protecting, defending, caring, building our community. You know, a bad message from, say, often from environmentalists would say, hey, you know that flooding you had last year? Oh boy, it's going to get much worse than that. That's just the beginning. You have no idea how bad this is going to get. Good language would say, hey, you remember that flooding last year? You remember how we all came together as a community? You remember how we supported each other? You remember how it was hard, but we pulled through. We did well. Well, there's probably going to be more of that. But we can come together, we can prepare to protect ourselves and care for people in our community, and we can be ready. That works. So, and the reason it works is because it says, this is who you are. You're important, you're valuable, and you're going to do this because it's who you are. It's a different way to say the same message. What people care about is also much more than climate change and the environment, too. So we have to take climate change out of this environmental box. I would love it, actually, if we didn't even talk about environment and climate change. We talked about climate change and everything else because people care about this. And right now, security is the big one. We know energy security and just security, just feeling that you can get by, that you can pay your bills, is the big one. So we can talk about a lot of these different things with people. Health is a very powerful way to talk about climate change. The impacts of climate change, air pollution, which is a product of burning fossil fuels. When I did focus groups with again, these groups, these are working class conservative groups, people were saying, I hate the way that I don't think children can play outside anymore. The air is too dirty. So the advantages there of action there is clean transport, clean air. We could also, from climate change, we could have an improved diet. There are positive arguments, and they're all about health, not environment, not polar bears, not glaciers, not climate change. Doctors are one of the most, as we saw, doctors are one of the most trusted communicators. So let's mobilize doctors to talk about it. Doctors are great. Doctors are doing a lot on this at the moment. I don't know if you saw, but I think 2 years ago, there was 1,000 doctors who wrote a petition asking for more action from the Belgian government. Around the world, doctors are mobilizing on climate change. Great. I think it's a great opportunity for them to talk. Talking about radical change doesn't work, but talking about restoring the balance, that works nicely. And again, we see this language again and again. I love this. This is from a group in Australia called Australian Conservation Foundation. And they are using language that we strongly recommend. Recover our economy, rebuild our community, renew our energy. It's these re-words, which work very, very well in English. Redo something, put it straight, restore the balance. And you'll notice the icon here is a surf, a surf watcher on the Gold Coast in Australia, like kind of iconic Australian figure. We did a program in Colombia on carbon pricing, where actually the whole program became called RE, which is Reducción de Emisión. I don't know how to speak Spanish, but I can't even do it. You can see for yourself there, reduction of emissions. And it's great because in Spanish, all of these RE words work super well. And it tested very well. So there are ways of a language we use which is effective. Common sense. I know that this is a political slogan here, but yeah. I mean, like, common sense. This is common sense. This is realistic. This is sensible. This is balanced, planned. It's fascinating to me that people in Belgium, according again to international research, are more concerned and supportive of long-term planning than almost any other country in Europe. It's a strong national tendency. And so things which are planned and worked for. This, by the way, is a quote from somebody in European People's Party, centre-right in European Parliament. We need to strike a balance between affordable and safe energy and effort. So this balance language. Now, we can also say climate change is a world out of balance. And when you ask people, what do you think about climate change, they often say balance. They say the season is coming at the wrong time. Yeah? Things are not right. It should not be like this. Very interesting in India, when we did groups in India, everybody talked about how the things were not at the right time. They have a very strong kind of cultural clock of the weather. So balance. Climate change is a world out of balance. We need to take action to put things back in balance. Not the same balance, but a new balance. Yeah? Sacred values. Okay, so I just want to go back a second and say, but this is not enough. Yeah? This is not enough. We can't just have a policy which is about, common sense. We have to appeal to something bigger. This is my sacred values. These were my kids when they were small and probably a little cuter than they are now. They're rather big and large now. But sacred, there are things which are so important to us we do not sacrifice them. And I think we need to speak to those values. And the joy of people being together, the joy of belonging. Again, why do we do this? Because it's who we are. And we love who we are. We're proud of who we are. We're part of this, and doing this makes us more who we are. In Wales, the research we did for the Welsh government showed that the project we did in 2012 showed that there was a very strong national identification with coal mining. My grandfather was a coal miner. I get so annoyed when my environmental friends talk about coal as if it just comes from the ground and forget that people dig it out. It's dirty, dangerous work. And we need to respect the people who do it. And in the language we used in Wales, we respected that tradition. Yeah? Natural resources that built our country, and we're rich in natural resources that will meet new challenges. So we have to respect fossil fuels. So much of this I feel is like a kind of a class struggle of privileged people saying to working people, we don't respect what you do. And that is how it appears on attitudes. So the big challenge then was we did a big project with over 70 organizations in Alberta, in Canada, maybe the most polarized place on Earth. I mean, absolutely split on climate change, because everybody is involved in the oil industry, or they have a family member in the oil industry, or friends in the oil industry. Everybody. I mean, we had 500 people we spoke to in this project, and every single one of them was somehow connected. So how do we talk about climate change in Alberta, in the middle of the oil industry? And the answer is, we respect the oil industry. Yeah? You start by respecting it. You say, we're grateful, but we have a problem. We have a problem, so we need to come together, use those skills, look at this in a new way, build on what we have already. It will not be easy. We will face this, but it will not be easy. Now, that is important, and we have tested that language and compared. It's, hey, there's so many things we can do to take action on climate change, an easy language, yeah? This will be easy if we just do this, and the hard language. This will not be easy. This will be difficult. This will be tough. And in every country across North Africa, in India, in Canada, in Europe, people want it will not be easy. So that's how we talk about it. It will not be easy, but we can do it because that is who we are. It's that same message again. And I think it ties in with this Flemish identity in a way as well. Yeah? This is tough, but we're tough. Yeah? We're hardworking. We can make this work. Belgian identity is challenging. In fact, someone said to me that the Belgian identity is not having an identity, which is kind of interesting. It's like in Britain, we're very proud of hating Britain. So we kind of like national patriotism is not being proud of Britain. But I think there's a lot here, even as an outsider, it seems to me. You know, you have your language identities, regional identities, communities. You know, you're very, very localized here. I think there's a lot to work with. Again, maybe we can talk about that. Because really, good communications would be saying, this is who you are. So we have to kind of find how best to speak to people. And I'm out of time, so I'll be very quick with the hows. How? Well, government people need to spend some money on this. The British government managed to spend 600 million euros on advertising during COVID. For heaven's sake, do you know what the British government is? The current British government's budget is for spending money on climate change communications. 0. There isn't 1 penny in the national communications budget for climate change. And remember, they signed the Paris Agreement, the international agreement, to say we will engage our citizens. They are not doing it. So we have to do that. We have to think of this as being like a literacy program. Yeah? Funding, research. Who is not being involved? Yeah? What are our targets? How do we reach people? You know, you spend in Belgium, you spend more than almost any country. You spend 6%, nearly 6% of GDP on education. So think of climate change as like literacy. How do we reach people? We need to mobilize new networks. There's people here I know from trades unions. Great. We did a big program called Climate Solidarity with trades unions. Together we can make change. We can work together. Employers' networks, leisure, sport, churches. Working through networks where people know and trust each other. There's great work happening in Australia at the moment on this. Every one of these groups has a network in support of action on climate change. Yeah? Vets, doctors, farmers. Yeah? All of these groups, they have people who are mobilizing, saying, this is who we are, this is what we care about, we want action on climate change. And everyone is using completely different language to speak to different audiences. And it works. And when? Well, now. So I guess the final point on this is when? Well, these are just some things to take away. When? Well, I think we should all have an ambition of trying to reach as many people and as wide as we can and talk to people around us and encourage people to talk about it. And I think for government needs to truly support this, fund networks, have a target, and think of this as probably being a 10-year project. Yeah? Not just a little program here or a little advertising campaign, like a 10-year project to support broad-based public engagement. Thank you. Now, everybody, you've had a lot of me speaking English, and this is a program about engagement in which it's just people saying we have to listen, and it's just us talking to you. We would like you, please, to talk to each other. Just for 10 minutes, to talk to the person next to you. It's a bit hard to talk behind you in this theatre. Talk to a person next to you, and ideally, not the person you know, but the person you don't know. Maybe 2 or 3 people together. Just a second. Introduce yourselves and say hi, and we would like you to say, what did you learn from what Jill was saying, what I was saying? What were the things you're thinking about? What might you want to ask a question or challenge? But also, really, really this big question about, like, so how do we move forward from this? What do we need? Wat is nodig? No, I've said that so wrong, haven't I? Yes, but what do we need? How do we make this new narrative? So just 10 minutes, just talking to each other, okay?
Hallo. Goedemiddag, goedemiddag. Hallo, hallo, hallo. We gaan stilaan. Het is geweldig om jullie zo te horen tateren.
Hallo, hallo. Okay.
Fantastisch. Fantastisch.
Hello, hello. Ah, good.
They warned George that the Flemish people usually are a bit resistant towards talking to each other, but apparently it wasn't really.
They're so sick of us. Please, I just want to talk. So we're going to have a chance for you to ask some questions to us, but we thought first of all that we would start because we had a few things we wanted to talk about, and then we're going to invite you to ask questions.
Yeah.
This is a bit like morning TV, isn't it? It's like, so what have you been doing, Jill? Yeah.
What's the weather
You've
like
been
today?
waterboarding, I hear. Yeah, I deal with the weather. Okay.
Well, we prepared some questions in English, but as you know, I'm not a native English, so I'll do my upper best to answer.
You're great. Better than my
Okay, so it will be a mixture in English and Flemish. So my first question to you, George, is how do you talk to someone who is resistant? We just had this little chat with the lady there in front, and she also said, yeah, like my father, he's very smart and he thinks he knows everything, but he's not so into climate change. So how do you start a conversation with someone who is resistant?
I think it's a two-way conversation, because in your work you encounter a lot of people who are opposed. So I'm going to push it back to you as well. I'm going to say this is interesting because I'm not talking now about a professional communicator doing a program. I'm talking about exactly that. The conversation you have with a family member, or with a friend, or with maybe somebody you meet on a train. I had a long conversation just 3 days ago with somebody sitting next to me in the cafe, telling me that climate change was all natural cycles. How do you speak to them? And I'd say, well, There is, by the way, on our website a thing called Talking Climate. It's a whole guide to how to have climate conversations. So do look at that. And I'd say, well, first of all, you don't think you're going to win the argument. You're not, and if you do change their views, they're not going to tell you. So, because if someone said to you something you disagreed with, you wouldn't go, oh, you know what? You're right and I'm wrong. Like, nobody does that. So what you're going to do is you're just going to say, well, this is what I think. You're going to treat them with respect. Maybe ask some questions. Say, so why do you think that? This is what I think. And I said to this guy, I was talking to 3 days ago, I said, so we're not going to agree on this. That's okay. I just want you to go away and remember that you met somebody who had thought about it, who said that climate change was a problem, who spoke to you with respect, and was interesting to talk to. Just go away with that. And he's really nice. I saw him the next day. He went, hi! Across the road, hi, Malcolm. And we're going to continue that conversation, because change does not happen in a sudden big jump. It happens a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. But it's very, very important. Very important, the conversations between people. Very important. Jill, over to you. You meet people all the time who challenge you, right? So what do you say to them?
Well, honestly, I usually try to avoid the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm invited very often to come and sit at round tables, and then I'm the, in Flemish, excuustruus, because they usually are white men, engineers, or would-be engineers, and they know how the system works, and they want me to sit there and go through their cherry picking. So I know already that it's not a debate, it's not a round table conversation. So it's something I learned from Jean-Pascal van Ipperseele, who said, okay, I avoid these discussions, so I don't put any energy in it anymore. I get these people really in front of my door, physically. They come and bring me reports, like, look, this is the truth, and you haven't read this. And they really expect me, paragraph by paragraph, an answer. So I don't have the time, so I avoid the conversation. Because I know it's a very complex subject. I do know how the atmosphere works, but I don't know how nuclear energy works. I don't know how a society really works. I don't know how policy making works. I know bits of it, but not enough to talk to a self-claimed expert. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you're in a special situation because they sound like stalkers. Right? And I mean, I can imagine, I don't want people outside my door. We'll move on to another question. I just wanted to leave the thought with people that I've lost my thought, so we'll move on to the next question. I know the next question. I wanted to ask Jill a question about motivation. This is a problem many of us face who work in this area. How do you keep your hope going, Jill? How do you keep your motivation going? You're in the middle of it. You can see the science. You're right in the middle of these extreme impacts. What keeps you going?
Well, what I've learned is that we do need a lot of brave people to continue working on this, because it's not like spreading the good message like the Bible, like the apostles, they could spread the good message. It's usually the bad message. So it's hard, but one of the twists I could make a few years ago is, it was after reading and meeting Leen Gorissen, who taught me the difference between doing and being. Because before that I was always focused on, I don't do enough, and what I do is not as perfect as I want it to be. And when I went to bed, I was like, oh, I should have done this, and tomorrow I have to do this and that. And I couldn't get to sleep anymore because it felt overwhelming. So what motivates me now is that I found my role, and at least I try to take up my responsibility. And it's whom I become now. It's the weather presenter of VTM. And people always look down to it, like, oh, VTM, I don't watch VTM, but they know what I've been wearing yesterday, so it's a bit strange. So, yeah, it's nevertheless, taking up the role and look at the role I can play, and I know that each of you have a role to play, and if you haven't found it yet, I'm sure you can find it, and it is somewhere, and now I sleep better. So that's what motivating me. I get up in the morning, I eat my breakfast as healthy as I can, and I use this energy the whole day to make the world a bit more beautiful.
I think we're all, I mean, you're a high-profile ambassador, but I think we are all ambassadors for climate change, right? So we're saying we're friends, we're family in our work. Whatever you do, you do many different things. We are all ambassadors. And you know, when people meet you, they're looking at you and they're going, this thing this person does, or this thing this person is telling me, is this something which is going to make my life better or happier? You know, like they're wondering. And I think it's very important that we project, if not hope, that we at least project the fact that we're proud and strong about what we're doing and that we want to be doing this, and this is a good place to be. Because I think a lot of people keep away from climate change to protect themselves, to defend themselves against information that they cannot handle and they do not feel power. So I think it's very good if we say, well, yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but I'm glad I'm doing this. I remember now also what I wanted to say, for when speaking to people who aren't sure, also to say, I'm on a journey with this, you know? So to deniers, I say, you know what, I didn't believe this stuff. There was a time I didn't really believe it, I didn't know it. It takes time, and this is where I am now, and we're all moving forward. And I think that's the same thing, right, with hope. We're all moving, yeah.
Yeah, I had a few interesting discussions the last few weeks and months about hope in climate messages, because one of the things I saw happening is communicating about hope sometimes changes into false hope or despair. Like if you try to show the light in the end of the tunnel. So can you maybe reflect on the aspect of hope in climate messages from maybe insights we get from social sciences? What can we learn from that? Is it important that we use hopeful messages in climate communication?
It's a really complex debate. I don't think there is a simple answer. Because as I said in the presentation, actually very easy language. In English we would say glib. Do we know the Dutch word for glib? Glib. Oh, okay. Oh, I can speak Flemish too. Glib. You know, I mean, things which are too easy, actually people don't like. So things that are too hopeful, and sometimes this kind of positivism is like, hey, capitalism will save us, and there's great engineering, and there's great technology. Actually, when you test it, people don't believe it. It doesn't smell right to them. At the same time, despair doesn't work either. And I think the formulation, as I said in the presentation, is somewhere in that space of saying, you know, this is hard, this is difficult, but we can do it because we can come together. I think it's got to be in that space. But we also have to be honest with people. We don't have to tell them the whole story. I think this is another thing. We don't have to say, oh, and if you think that's bad, well, there's that, and there's that, and there's that, and there's that, which many of my environmental friends do, because there's a kind of disaster porn, I think, to be honest, for many activists. They get kind of energized by it. I know that sometimes I get that feeling. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, this is going to be hard, but we can do it. I don't know. What do you think, Jill? You must have this all the time, right?
Yeah, I have this all the time, but it's a balance, as you say. It's finding the right angle, and with trial and error. Looking back at the work I did, I know that a lot of things I did in climate communication, I won't do it again. I would do it another way, maybe closer to the people. Because one of the things I'm worried about is showing best practices, bringing good stories in a smart way might have the perverse effect that people are like, okay, those smart, handsome guys will solve it. So that's the best excuse I have not to do anything now or change my habits. Could you reflect on that too, George? Like those two worlds?
I think the thing that we didn't mention, I wrote a book on the psychology of climate change called Don't Even Think About It, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Ignore Climate Change. There's not many books on the subject. And I was very interested in this issue of the psychology. I spoke with a lot of leading specialists on this. And the problem we have with climate change is twofold. There's one which I mentioned, which is distancing, where we say, wow, that's a long way away, that's something in the poles, or that's the polar bears, or that's something in the future. But there's also this projection. And what you're describing there, Jill, is projection. Like, they'll sort it out, but there's another kind as well, which is it's their fault, it's their responsibility, and it's a very strong, in some cases, that's very fair, you know? I mean, I can imagine if I was in Pakistan, I'd be really feeling that I didn't make this happen, it's them. And it's true, there is different responsibilities. Some people have no responsibility. But I think there's a way that we can talk about responsibility but not talk about blame or anger. Or I guess the problem we have with climate change as a story is that it doesn't have a very clear enemy. This is a big problem with it, okay? So we like things with an enemy. So like if Putin was causing climate change, it would be a very easy problem for us, yeah? Or North Korea, or if we had an enemy making it, but it isn't.
It's us.
It's us. It's us. And it's us. And it's also, and we're not trying to make harm, we're just feeding our families or going on holiday or heating our houses. And that's what makes it hard. So it's difficult. It's this, again, it's this balance between responsibility without blame. And forgiving ourselves. I think we need forgiveness on this. Yeah? I don't want to forgive Shell for going and doing more exploration. But I do want to forgive, I want to forgive people, including ourselves, for what we've done in the past when we didn't know what we were doing.
Okay, I think we're running out of time of this discussion, but we're looking forward to your questions. There are two mics.
Questions.
I heard there are two mics going around. Or if you stand up and can speak up loud, we can.
And what we try and do for,
question.
Can I say what we try and do for the questions is try and keep the question fairly short, and we will try and answer fairly short. We're going to try and keep our answers down short. But also, it's not just questions. There are many people in this room with a lot of experience and skills. So please, you tell us your experience and what you know as well. Yeah? Not just questions, anything you want to say, but just fairly short, please. Yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me in the room? Yes, okay. Since we can talk about our experience rather than asking questions, I thought, okay, let's take the mic then. Because you asked a question about hope in climate communication, and I actually do kind of have an answer to that. I'm a researcher in the field of future studies, so we examine how people think about the future, how they imagine the future, how that has an impact on their behavior today, and also how you can help people to imagine alternatives to what they are already thinking. And there is research showing that hope is actually an emotion that bypasses system justification, which means rationalizing the system that you live in because you feel that you cannot change it even though you know it's bad. And hope can bypass system justification. So it is a good emotion to use in communication concerning crises like this. But it's also important to let people imagine positive expectations, which means that they have an expectation of success. So if you let people just fantasize about hopeful futures, but they do not feel that it can be reached, it actually has the opposite effect. So it's the combination of a hopeful image, but also an image that creates a feeling of success and positive expectations, actually helps people to take action in the present.
Thank you.
That was
Can
not
I ask
really
a very quick, but let's just do it very quickly, question for you, as you're a specialist in this. Have young people given up on hope for the future? I'm aware of a research which shows that for young people there is a real growing sense of despair and pessimism about the future. Just quickly, what does the research say on that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Questions?
Questions. Do we have one from this side? Just put up your hand and there's someone in the middle of the row just there. And then there's the fellow up there, yeah. Well, we'll try and keep men and women mixed, yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So we had a fair share of information how to talk to different kinds of people and different kind of people in the in the world. But I was wondering, do you have any suggestions how to talk to governments or how to engage governments on the climate subject? I'm asking it because about 7 years ago, I wrote an open letter to our governments saying that they're not doing enough for our climate. I was worried. I think I was about 15 years old then. It was spread in magazines and stuff like that, and I was on the radio, but after that, silence, so nothing happened. Now, 7 years later, I was thinking maybe I should redo it, but with another communication style, and maybe that will work.
I have some thoughts, but I'm wondering, Jill, you must speak with governments. No? Okay. I think there's answers to that, but I think if are we talking to governments or are we talking to politicians? That's the first question. If we're speaking to politicians, politicians are people, surprisingly. But politicians are also a very particular culture of people, and the same questions come up as if I was talking to coal miners. What do they care about? What motivates them? What are their values? Yeah, what are they interested in? I did a piece of work on how to talk with people on the centre-right of the European Parliament. Again, I'm always interested in this political space because this is actually the most important for shifting attitudes on climate change. There's a big difference between left and right, and it's often people on the right who are most important for moving the dial and getting action on this. And I interviewed 10 MEPs from the centre-right, and each time I said to them, so tell me, what makes you proud of your work? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you really care about? The same questions I would ask anybody. Yeah. So I'd say that the answer on that is you start with thinking, what does a politician care about and what motivates them? And there's many different answers to that. I think legacy is often very important. I think a lot of politicians are concerned with what they leave behind. They have a sense of themselves as doing a good job of serving people. Now remember, it doesn't matter if this is true or not. It's how they see their image which is important. And of course, they want to be re-elected. I think often we did some work with the CDU in Germany, and their biggest concern was that they were actually losing a political position on climate change because the denial was coming in from Alternative for Deutschland, the far-right party, from one side, and from the Green Party, activism on climate change was moving into their space from the left, and they were feeling squeezed. And we just said, look at what's happening there. You have to become engaged. So yeah, same answer. It's like whoever we're speaking to, just think, what are their concerns? What motivates them? Hope that's helpful. There was a guy there in the middle, and then.
Yep. Good afternoon. I'm actually a colleague from Peggy. Indeed, we're working at the Belgian coast, and we just organized a series of lectures on climate change on the Belgian coast. Mm-hmm. But apparently, we did it all wrong. We communicated as a government. We hired researchers who are all not believed and have very low trust degrees. So maybe you should retry it. But when we started this, we had our main thought was we need to inform people of what climate change at the coast can bring. So we want people who can share their knowledge with inhabitants, but probably will only reach the believers. And actually, it was like that. And we did it from Bruges until the Panne. 2 lectures are still coming up on agriculture and the polders, big issue. But how do we reach these non-believers? As the title of the lecture here is engage people. How do we, we trying to inform the people, get into the zone of these non-believers, these battlers, disengaged battlers? Can you give us some thoughts of maybe organizing a next series, not of lectures then, but focus groups or whatever, knowing that we work from during Monday till Fridays, maybe on Saturdays, but yeah, that's reality. We did it 11 times in the evening. Only me and my colleague here somewhere in the room, and it was quite. We were quite tired after that because we did it as in surplus on our normal jobs, and so we lost a bit hope. Like, okay, we informed 600 people. That's not little, but that's not much. And are they engaged? We don't know. They were worried, they were informed, but will they do anything more? Will they use their knowledge to do something? We don't know. So I'm very curious for your insights. How can we improve our...
Yeah, it's obviously this is a very big question, right? So I can only give you some thoughts. The first question is that, the first answer is that you should not have to be doing this. I go back to the point of saying that I hope that there's other people here also from the Flemish government, or, and this also goes for a national level. There should be a sustained, systemic program for engaging people, so it is not you in your spare time going and doing this. It should be a regular, maintained program. The second thing is asking how best to reach people, and the best way to reach people is through the networks that they are already in. And I go back to that point of saying there are many, many different networks in different cultures, have different networks of ways of reaching people who are not in the environmental section. And I think it needs time. Yeah. So, but I wouldn't call these people non-believers. There's a category of people, like Jill was describing, of the people whose identity is not accepting climate change. And I'm just like, we don't waste our time with them. We can talk to them and learn from them, but the really important people are the people who go, yeah, I can see that there's a problem, but I don't feel there's anything I can do about it. And again, I think that the answer is we reach them through other networks. So maybe not you doing it, but maybe you trying to work with people who reach those groups better. And I can't answer what those groups would be, but I know in my own work, my own organization is working with a wide range of funny things. Caravan Club. One of our partners, the Caravan Club is the second largest membership organization in the United Kingdom. It's huge. And no environmental organization has ever talked with them before, really. It's interesting. So they're these huge networks and organizations that maybe Jill, can you think of a huge network, a huge Flemish network that...
Ik weet niet dat de naam nog correct is, maar de gezinsbond. Ik heb altijd zo het gevoel gehad, waarom nemen die dat niet... Misschien zit hier iemand, sorry, maar waarom nemen die dat onderwerp niet echt vast? Maar there's a network, it's called Family Care. And it's a supportive network for children and families.
Yeah. So I haven't helped you much, but I've just said that I feel is the approach. Could we...
Two more questions, and then...
Yes, please.
There's one with the mic. Short, maybe?
Yeah, it does work.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi. I'm in the environmental movement already for a while. So I have been communicating in bad ways for a while. But sometimes I also have the feeling you're pushed to do it by the media. So I was wondering how to deal with the media. Because when we want to say something and we can when we have a scandal and we can put some numbers on and bad things that happen, media often is very interested. But when we want to bring positive stories about how things could be different, and it's much more difficult to get hurt by them. So I was wondering how to deal with the media, because they have a very big role to play.
That's a question for you, Joe.
I'm going to answer in Dutch.
Yeah, please.
Sorry. Goeie vraag. Er is net een studie uitgekomen van een PhD-student aan de VUB ook, die daarmee dealt. Wat daar heel interessant was, dat daaruit kwam, is van kijk, het is een heel complex onderwerp en journalisten gaan niet graag in complexe onderwerpen, al zeker niet het klimaat. Dus verwacht van hen geen kritische vragen. Niet naar de ene richting, niet naar de andere. Dat is hoe dat de media tegenwoordig werkt. Helaas, er zijn een paar gespecialiseerde journalisten in ons land. Je kan ze op één hand tellen, je kent ze waarschijnlijk wel. Probeer hen te bereiken en te charmeren met uw positive stories. Alleen positive stories verkopen niet in de media, dus worden niet graag gebracht. In het mediabedrijf waar ik nu zit, bij DPG, moet het altijd monstrous storm en moet altijd spektakel en dat werkt. Dus positieve verhalen passen niet in de idee van de hits, clicks, like, retweets. Dus daar is geen platform voor. Helaas. De vrienden aan de Rijerslaan heb ik met de reeks proberen te charmeren van wat houdt ons tegen. Ik heb een vervolggesprek gehad, mocht dat gerust weten. En ik heb er geen probleem mee dat dit gefilmd wordt. Maar ik heb daar met de directie gesproken voor 1, een vervolg, of 2, de mogelijkheid om dat op andere platformen uit te zenden, of langer dan nu oktober. En het programma vinkte al van alles af. Namelijk, het was wetenschap, het was klimaat, het was een vrouw. Ik vinkte alles af. En nu gaan we iets leuk doen. Nu gaan we iets met pluimen in de poep en feest. En dat hebben we weer gehad. En onze verantwoordelijkheid is weg. En ik heb dat gesprek gehad, een Don't Look Up gesprek, waar ik zo'n ogen heb getrokken. Ik begrijp niet dat er voltijds iemand wordt betaald om alles van de filmindustrie op te volgen, om alle nieuwe releases van films te laten zien, om gesprekken te hebben met acteurs, om naar de filmfestivals te gaan, terwijl er geen budget is om iemand voltijds voor dit onderwerp te engageren, die met de topwetenschappers gaat spreken, die naar topklimaatconferenties gaat, die good stories brengt of bad stories, I don't care. En dat budget is er niet bij onze Rijerslaan-vrienden. Dus ik wou dat ik u een antwoord kon geven. Ga naar de goede journalisten proberen hen te charmeren. Ik denk dat dat de enige toegang is op dit moment.
We have time for... Did that answer? Do we have time for one, maybe 2 more? Please.
Peggy
Thank
still
you.
has her closing
Oh,
remarks.
yeah,
Thank you both for the illustrating and really interesting talks you have given. I would like to know whether we shouldn't, after so many years, put this on the level of education as well and include climate change, biodiversity crisis also in the educational curriculum. And one other message I had, I think it's important to continue passing messages of hope. Hope is inspiring people to take action.
Thank you so much. In Britain, it is in the educational curriculum, but not enough. Is that not the case in Flanders or Belgium?
Het zat niet in de leertermen. Het begint er nu. It wasn't in there, but now it slowly starts. It's in the lessons of geography. Yeah. Like it's where you get it. Yeah, one by one.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, the answer is obviously, absolutely yes. I think it's absolutely essential. It fits very well with geography, but it also fits well with with physics or politics or any of these things. Yeah, and it's interesting that the countries which have had climate change on strongly in the educational curriculum are often the ones which have the strongest youth movements too. So like kids know about it and they become very involved with it. So yeah, completely. Yeah, thank you also for hope. Yeah, thank you for your comment. Peggy, do you want to finish up your comments? Yeah?
I think we have
Oh, okay. We can have time for one more.
One
Did
more
we have
question.
one more? Oh. We've got... I'm afraid I think the microphones are over there, so...
Okay.
There was the... Where's it going? Oh, okay. There. Hi.
We can't hear you.
Is this better? I don't particularly need to have the last word, but I think as a white old man, not an engineer, but an architect, and I want to remember the 70s and the 80s, where we had the famous Club of Rome, where we also had the Sundays that we could not drive the car because of the problem with the fossil fuels. We actually have been discussing for 50 years now about whether it's climate change or it's not climate change. I think we should stop with this, about that discussion, and try to inspire the younger people to bring the hope back, because it's not worse than a war, it's not worse than so many disasters that have happened in history, and we all survived it. So I think we really need to have that message of hope, because there are so many ideas, so many inspiring stories to tell, and I just hope that the government also can help us create a platform or create events where we can show our inspiring things that we are doing.
Thank you so much, and I'd like to say also I'm careful with hope, because the overall picture is very, very serious, but you know, in the time I've been working on this, there really has been an absolute transformation in political action, in, oh my God, I mean the level of change in terms of energy production, for example. And there's been a change in attitudes, a big one. When I wrote my book 5 years ago, almost everybody, large majorities, were saying climate change is a problem in the future for future generations. That has completely shifted. It's reversed. So it was 80% said it's a problem for the future. It's now 80% say it's a problem now. It's happening now. So we're seeing the shifts, and the shifts are positive. The worry, of course, is the lag, is how long it takes for things to change. But I think this change is happening as fast as human change normally does, which is in a generation. It's not fast enough, I'm afraid, but I think we're seeing a generational change now. So I think we can be positive. But it all depends, in English we say, you know, glass half full, glass half empty. So do you look at this glass and say, wow, it's half full, or do you say half empty? And I think the hope is we can say half full, but there's the other half, yeah.
George, can you give us 1 minute on some insight on the new book you're writing, or is it something secret?
No.
Because I know you've been talking with Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah, well, Daniel Kahneman wrote Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. He got a Nobel Prize for
Economics.
Yeah, for economics, although he's actually a psychologist looking at bias. Yeah, I mean, I've been talking with a bunch of people about how do we respond psychologically to climate change when it really, really hits hard around 2050. And I think that's the key question now. So how do we prepare ourselves for this so we're in the right place? Because this is going to be hard, and in 2050 it's going to be hard, and we hope we need to be in a place, and this is everything about engagement is about this, a place where we're saying we can all contribute, we can work together, we can be constructive, this is hard, but we can do it. But there's a lot of other ways we can respond. We can go straight into denial, we can avoid things, we can climb into our virtual reality headset, we can just ignore it, or we can just start to scapegoat. Yeah? You know, I was talking with somebody who specializes in abuse, in relationship abuse, and she said, another degree, in her work, another degree is another bunch of women getting hit by their husbands. There's a way that there's lots of dangers that climate change will lead to all of these other problems where we just find somebody to hurt. So I'm sorry about bringing down on this, but I think, but this is what I'm working on now, and I think this is the challenge. We need to be prepared not just for climate impacts, but also the social impacts. How will we feel? And how can we be in a positive place to deal with the problems?
When will it be published?
Oh, I don't know, about 2050, I think. No, in about 2 years, I'll let you know. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Peggy, you good? Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Zo, dankjewel George en Jill voor jullie ongelooflijk boeiende uiteenzetting en inzichten. Thank you so much. What an energy. Voor ik jullie allen laat gaan voor een hapje en een drankje, wil ik wel nog vragen, en ik weet niet, misschien kan iemand de slide veranderen? Ja. Om onze korte online enquête in te vullen. Het is een vragenlijst om een beetje een inschatting te maken van hoe dit voor jullie was. De QR-code hangt ook nog op in de plaats waar we de receptie hebben straks. In de vragenlijst kan je ook je gegevens achterlaten. En dat moet je vooral doen als je echt op de hoogte wil blijven van verdere initiatieven rond publiek engagement. Dan kunnen we jullie op de hoogte houden. Er staat trouwens al een volgend evenement in de Steigers. In januari organiseren we samen met Bond Beter Leefmilieu, Koning Boudewijn Stichting, Puls Transitienetwerk, Reset.Vlaanderen en The Shift een inspiratie- en netwerkmoment. Ook daar gaan die inzichten uit sociale wetenschappen weer centraal staan. We tonen daar concrete initiatieven die die verbinding mogelijk maken. Dat zijn initiatieven die de verbinding maken omdat ze een brug slaan tussen de problemen, dus het klimaatprobleem en de leefwereld van mensen. En omdat ze een brug slaan tussen mensen onderling, weg van polarisatie. We kijken er alvast met de partners heel erg naar uit om daar weer ons schouders onder te zetten. Tot slot ook nog dit. Dat de lezing van George en Jill op zoveel interesse kon rekenen, stemt mij ook in deze moeilijke tijden optimistisch. Want het vergroten van dat publiek engagement, daar hebben we eigenlijk allemaal wel een rol in te vervullen, zoals eigenlijk vandaag wel heel duidelijk werd. Maar nu ga ik jullie gewoon uitnodigen voor de receptie. Als je nog vragen hebt of suggesties, kom gerust aan mijn mouw trekken. Of aan die van George of Jill. Ze gaan ook heel graag het gesprek aan. Laat het smaken en een fijne avond nog.